At the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Friday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stepped up to the podium. As he prepared to speak, representatives from dozens of countries left the chamber in protest, setting the tone for his defiant address.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of the State of Israel. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly. Please, order in the hall. 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 Please order in the hall and please be seated.
Netanyahu opened with a forceful defense of Israel's actions in Gaza. He declared, "We're not done yet. The final remnants of Hamas are hiding in Gaza City, and they vowed to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again. That is why Israel must finish the job, and that is why we want to do it as quickly as possible."
Iran was rapidly developing a massive nuclear weapons program and a massive ballistic missile program. These were meant not only to destroy Israel, they were meant also to threaten the United States and blackmail nations everywhere. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of Hamas terrorists. They stormed into Israel on October 7th and committed acts of unspeakable savagery. Thanks to the resolve of our people, the courage of our soldiers, and the bold decisions we took, Israel rebounded from its darkest day to deliver one of the most stunning military comebacks in history. But we're not done yet. The final elements, the final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. That is why we want to do so as fast as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, much of the world no longer remembers October 7th. But we remember. Israel remembers October 7th. On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here. They beheaded men. They raped women. They burnt babies alive. They burnt babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters! And these monsters took more than 250 people hostage. And those included Holocaust survivors, grandmothers and their grandchildren. Who takes hostage grandmothers and grandchildren? Hamas does. So far, we've brought home 207 of these hostages, but 48 still remain in the dungeons of Gaza. 20 of them are alive, starved, tortured, deprived of any daylight, deprived of humanity.
His office had announced earlier that his speech would be broadcast through loudspeakers, pointed toward Gaza from the Israeli side of the border. Netanyahu addressed not only the General Assembly but also an audience far beyond it. Speaking in both Hebrew and English, he sent a message to the roughly 20 hostages believed to still be alive in Gaza. Our brave heroes, this is Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to you live from the United Nations. We have not forgotten you, not even for a second. The people of Israel are with you. We will not falter, and we will not rest until we bring all of you home.
I want to do something I've never done before. I want to speak from this forum directly to those hostages through loudspeakers. I've surrounded Gaza with massive loudspeakers connected to this microphone in the hope that our dear hostages will hear my message. And I'll say it first in Hebrew and then in English. אחינו הגיבורים, מדבר ראש הממשלה בנימין נתניהו. אני פונה עליכם מעל בימת האו"ם. לא שכחנו אתכם, אפילו לא לשנייה. העם כולו איתכם, ואנחנו לא נשקוט ולא נרפה עד שנחזיר את כולכם הביתה. החיים והחללים כאחד. Our brave heroes. This is Prime Minister Netanyahu speaking to you live from the United Nations. We have not forgotten you, not even for a second. The people of Israel are with you. We will not falter and we will not rest until we bring all of you home.
He then directed remarks to Hamas leaders and hostage takers, urging them to surrender and release the captives. Lay down your arms, let my people go, free the hostages. If you do, you will live. If you don't, Israel will hunt you down. Netanyahu added that the address was also being streamed to Gazans' phones.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to special efforts by Israeli intelligence, my words are now also being carried. They're streamed live to the cell phones of Gazans. So to the remaining Hamas leaders and to the jailers of our hostages, I now say, lay down your arms. Let my people go. Free the hostages, all of them, the whole 48. Free the hostages now. If you do, you will live. If you don't, Israel will hunt you down. Ladies and gentlemen, if Hamas agrees to our demands, the war could end right now. Gaza would be demilitarized, Israel would retain overriding security control, and a peaceful civilian authority would be established by Gazans and others committed to peace with Israel.
In a continuation of themes from past speeches, Netanyahu displayed a map of regional threats tied to Iran. With a black marker, he crossed out each group he claimed Israel had weakened over the past year. We hammered the Houthis, we crushed Hamas's terror machine, and we crippled Hezbollah by taking out many of its leaders and weapons, he said. He credited U.S. President Donald Trump for helping Israel strike Iranian nuclear sites in June, declaring that this action removed a mortal threat to the civilized world.
So what's happened over the past year? We've hammered the Houthis, including yesterday. We crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine. We crippled Hezbollah, taking out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. You remember those beepers, the pagers? We paged Hezbollah. And believe me, they got the message. And thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. We destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria. We deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq. And most importantly, and above anything else that I could say to you or that we did in this past year, in this past decade, We devastated Iran's atomic weapons and ballistic missiles programs. So, here's where things stand today. Half the Houthi leadership in Yemen, gone. Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, gone. Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, gone. The Assad regime in Syria, gone. Those militias in Iraq, well, they're still deterred. And their leaders, if they attack Israel, will also be gone. And for Iran's top military commanders and its top atomic bomb scientists, well, they're gone too. And you saw this. Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 pilots bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. I want to thank President Trump for his bold and decisive action. President Trump and I promised to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons, and we delivered on that promise. We removed an existential threat to Israel, and a mortal threat to the civilized world. We lifted a dark cloud that could have claimed millions and millions of lives.
Before departing Israel, Netanyahu had vowed to challenge nations that announced recognition of a Palestinian state during the summit. At the UN, he sharply criticized those leaders. When the most savage terrorists on earth praise your decision, you didn't do something right. You did something horribly wrong. It will be a mark of shame on all of you.
This week, the leaders of France, Britain, Australia, Canada, and other countries unconditionally recognized a Palestinian state. They did so after the horrors committed by Hamas on October 7th. Horrors praised on that day by nearly 90% of the Palestinian population. Let me say that again. Nearly 90% of Palestinians supported the attack on October 7th. You know what message the leaders who recognize a Palestinian state this week sent to the Palestinians? It's a very clear message. Murdering Jews pays off. Well, I have a message for these leaders. When the most savage terrorists on earth are effusively praising your decision, you didn't do something right. You did something wrong, horribly wrong. Your disgraceful decision will encourage terrorism against Jews and against innocent people everywhere. It will be a mark of shame on all of you. But wait a minute, Mr. Prime Minister, they tell me. Wait a minute. We believe in a two-state solution where the Jewish state of Israel will live side by side in peace with the Palestinian state. There's only one problem with that. The Palestinians, they don't believe in this solution. They never have. They don't want a state next to Israel. They want a Palestinian state instead of Israel. And that's why every time they were offered a Palestinian state, but were required to end the conflict with Israel and recognize the Jewish state, every time, over the decades, they turned it down. And that is why every time they were given territory, they used it to attack us. In fact, they effectively had a Palestinian state in Gaza. So what did they do with that state? Peace? Coexistence? No. They attacked us time and time again. Totally unprovoked. They fired rockets into our cities. They murdered our children. They turned Gaza into a terror base from which they committed the October 7th massacre.
Outside the UN headquarters in New York, protesters gathered. including families of hostages who demanded stronger efforts for their release. Inside the assembly, Netanyahu faced sharp rebukes from global leaders. Qatar's emir condemned Israel as a rogue government, accusing it of staging attacks while negotiating in Doha. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said the destruction in Gaza had reached unprecedented levels and urged Israel to comply with international court rulings requiring steps to prevent genocide. Netanyahu's trip to New York also carried personal risks. The International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant against him, and his flight path avoided airspace of countries that could enforce it. Both Israel and the United States reject the ICC's jurisdiction. While in the U.S., Netanyahu is set to meet with President Trump in Washington. Officials from both governments say the private meeting could prove more significant than the UN speech, with discussions expected to cover the recognition of Palestinian statehood and Israel's possible responses. International coverage of the walkout emphasized the scale of opposition Netanyahu faced. 77 countries, including Spain, Brazil, South Africa, and Ireland, were listed as absent or walking out. Critics argued that Israel is increasingly isolated on the world stage, facing economic sanctions, arms restrictions, diplomatic boycotts, and social backlash abroad. Netanyahu responded with defiance, accusing Western nations of caving to pressure from a biased media, radical Islamist constituencies, and anti-Semitic mobs. He warned that recognizing Palestinian statehood only rewarded violence, declaring, "Israel will not allow you to shove a terror state down our throats."
Yet over time, many world leaders buckled. They buckled under the pressure of a biased media, radical Islamist constituencies, and anti-Semitic mobs. There's a familiar saying, when the going gets tough, the tough get going. Well, for many countries here, when the going got tough, you caved. And here's the shameful result of that collapse. For much of the past 2 years, Israel has had to fight a seven-front war against barbarism, with many of your nations opposing us. For 3 weeks, Israel dropped millions of leaflets, sent millions of text messages, and made countless phone calls urging civilians to leave Gaza City before our military moves in. At the same time, Hamas implants itself in mosques, schools, hospitals, apartment buildings, and tries to force those civilians not to leave, to stay in harm's way. And it often threatens them at gunpoint if they try to do so. For Israel, every civilian casualty is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. Hamas uses civilians as human shields and as props in its sick propaganda war in Israel, against Israel, a propaganda war that the Western media buys hook, line, and sinker. Would a country committing genocide plead with the civilian population it is supposedly targeting to get out of harm's way? Would we tell them, get out, if we want to commit genocide? We're trying to get them out. And Hamas is trying to keep them in. And this charge is so baseless. The comparison to genocide. Israel is accused of deliberately starving the people of Gaza, when Israel is deliberately feeding the people of Gaza. Since the beginning of the war, Israel has let into Gaza more than 2 million tons of food and aid. That's 1 ton of aid for every man, woman, and child in Gaza. Nearly 3,000 calories per person per day. Some starvation policy. If there are Gazans who don't have enough food, it's because Hamas is stealing it. Hamas steals it, hoards it, and sells it at exorbitant prices to fight its war machine. Even the UN admitted that Hamas and other armed groups looted 85% of the trucks. That's why you have deprivation. So here's another message to those Western leaders. Israel will not allow you to shove a terrorist state down our throats. We will not commit national suicide because you don't have the guts to face down a hostile media and anti-Semitic mobs demanding Israel's blood.
That's all for now from Global Pulse Unplugged. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll see you next time.